Right. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, depending on where in the world you are and what time in the world you are watching this. My name is Faith Halverson Ramos, and I'm a music therapist and licensed professional counselor in Colorado. And today I am happy to be interviewing my colleague and friend, Rachelle Norman, who is a music therapist specializing in elder care. And over the course of our interview, we're going to just talk about what led her to becoming a music therapist, specializing in working with elders, and learning a little bit more about her musical journey um, as a musician, because music therapists, at the very core of who they are musicians, and we all have different ways of finding our way into this profession. So, without further ado, here we go. Thank you,
Yay!
Rachelle, for agreeing to do this with me.
I'm happy to be here.
Wonderful. So, to begin with, would you like to just speak a little bit more about your work as a music therapist and your particular area of expertise and passion?
Sure. I've been a board certified music therapist for almost 12 years now, since 2004. And I've worked with folks from a lot of different backgrounds and healthcare settings, but these days I mostly work with older adults in long-term care settings and in hospice. And the majority of my clients have dementia at some stage. So, um, so what I do with them is make music. I mean, the way we work with each other and all the work of therapy that we do together happens in the music that we share. In a group setting, we'll bring in music that is meant to spark memories and get people to interact with each other and engage in the music in different ways. When I work with people in hospice, same thing, but often people in hospice are um, further along in their disease process, and so they might not be as interactive and energetic. And so I'm providing music as a way to provide them some comfort and a holding environment, um, and also a way for them to express emotions and to share stories and memories and that kind of thing too. So all of that's happening through the music, and so my days are very very musical because I'm doing music all day with people, but in a very different way than if I were performing or if I were teaching music.
Yeah, could you speak a little bit more about what that means? Because there are a lot of misconceptions out there about what music therapy is and what music therapists do, and especially in working with older adults or people who have dementia or people who are receiving hospice care. A music therapy session can look really different um, than other forms of music therapy sessions.
Right. Yeah. Well, I'm going to ask you to repeat the question. I lost you there
Yes.
for a
Yes.
second and lost the
Sorry.
thread of the conversation.
Yeah. I was just asking if you could speak a little bit more about what music making, being in the music, um, means or looks like as a therapist, as
Okay.
opposed to an entertainer or a performer or teacher.
Okay. Well, for me, and I have a music centered approach to music therapy. So I see music as therapy. So what we're doing in music, how we're playing music together, how they're receiving music from me, or um, how how I'm inviting them into the music as listeners or as dancers or as instrument players or singers or as storytellers. All of that is where we get the therapeutic outcomes. And so it's a very mutual music making kind of relationship. So instead of me, the teacher, teaching somebody how to play music better to a certain external standard, or me as a performer providing this experience of receiving music or listening to music. I am I'm always figuring out ways for us to be in the music together in some kind of mutual way. And that depends on the client I'm working with, what their needs are and what their abilities are is going to help determine what kind of how they're going to be in the music. But either way, I'm not the one who is I'm not just presenting music to them or giving music to them. I'm entering into a musical relationship with them.
Beautiful.
Yeah, it's funny because I was just talking with somebody yesterday about how, as a singer, I sing with my clients, my patients all day long, and I sing, I improvise vocally, I help them sing better, I harmonize, all that kind of stuff. But I would never get up in front of my church and sing a solo. Like that is just something I wouldn't do. Even though people hear me sing all the time, I think I have a decent voice, but it's a very different frame of mind from being in a therapeutic, like mutual relationship versus being a performer for the people in front of you.
Yeah. Yeah, the whole intention behind the the musical interaction and what the purpose is, I think,
Mm-hmm.
is really is interesting to me because it looks different depending on what your role
Yeah.
is at
Mm-hmm.
the moment. So what what led you to music therapy?
Well, the story I usually tell is that when I was a junior in high school, I was looking into colleges and thinking about college majors. And I started getting college brochures in the mail. And at the time I was thinking, I really wanted to continue with music in some fashion because I was oboist. I was in the band and the orchestra, and I was in the youth symphony on the weekends and the community band on the weekends. And so I was just playing music all the time. And I couldn't imagine just stopping, like not doing music every day anymore. So I was thinking about music education. I didn't really want to be a performer, but I was also really interested in psychology and considering, maybe I would be a counselor eventually, social worker, something like that. Well, I got a brochure from the University of Evansville, and there was an interview with their music therapy professor, Alan Solomon, at the time, and just a little article in there about music therapy. And I read that. I knew immediately that was it. That's what I was meant to do. And um, I did my due diligence and did a college visit and interviewed and asked questions about what music therapy was like on a day-to-day basis and all that kind of stuff. But ended up as a music therapy major and did my bachelor's degree and have been in music therapy ever since. So that's how I ended up in the profession of music therapy. I think that I've always been pulled in the direction of music combined with helping or healing because of my family, because of my parents. My dad is a minister, and my mom is she was a pastor's wife and a stay-at-home mom for a long time, and then she had other jobs once my brothers and I got to be older. But she was a musician, played piano in church when I was little. My grandmothers both played piano, and what they played was church hymns, and so music and spirituality and caring for other people within the church, those were all very closely connected. The part how music plays a role in funerals and in weddings, like that was just part of my life, that I saw music in all those ways. So I think that I feel like I was called to music therapy, and I feel like it's a direction I've always been heading ever since I've become a musician. In fact, funny story, I started taking piano lessons as a second grader, and my teacher was, a little lady who lived in a house across the lawn from our church. So I would ride my bike over to her house for my piano lesson. And then when she retired and moved away, her house became a part of the church. So there you go. Music has always been right there.
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't realize all of those connections because, as you
Mm-hmm.
know, I'm very much interested in the relationship between music and spirituality,
Hmm.
and the relationship of spirituality and health.
Yes.
Wow. So from as a little child, little girl, you were just immersed.
Yeah. It's funny looking at it now too. Because my parents didn't know about music therapy, so it's not like I was being groomed to be a music therapist or anything like that. But I don't know. It just feels like my life was headed that direction some way or another.
Nice. So your formal relationship with music, did that begin when you were in second grade taking piano lessons, or?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, I was we had music class in elementary school, so I was in the choir there. And I mean, I always played music as a kid, like just the way little kids do without prompting, singing and playing and all that. Formal, yeah, second grade piano lessons. Started band in fifth grade, switched to the oboe in sixth grade, and then I was an oboist ever since. Yep.
What did you play in fifth grade?
I played flute for a year, but I got bored
Ah,
because I'd already taken piano lessons for so long that I was already pretty advanced in music theory, and so I was bored, so my band teacher switched me over to oboe, which is perfect for me. Personality
but
wise, I think I was meant to be an oboist as well.
really,
Yeah.
do oboists have a certain personality?
Oh, you haven't been hanging around orchestra people enough, I guess.
Only my husband, only Miguel. He's a string player, but
Okay. Yeah. Oh no, oboists, we tend to be perfectionists and like A students, and you stick to it. And we think the reason for that is because we have to deal with reeds, which are these little tiny, double reed, little tiny pieces of cane that have to be scraped just so, and then they only last for a couple weeks, and they're like $14 a piece if you buy them, or they were, well, 20 years ago they were $14 a piece, probably like $30 a piece now to buy them from a store or whatever. And so your life surrounds these little tiny pieces of cane. Takes a certain personality to be able to handle that.
yeah, someone who's persistent,
Uh-huh.
dedicated, committed.
Yeah, yeah. That's the reputation anyway, but seems to I think it's most of the oboists I play. And actually there are a lot of oboists who end up as music therapists. It's kind of funny to track that too.
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah.
hmm.
It would be an interesting study someday to look at major instruments and who ends up as music therapists.
Yeah, that would be interesting.
Hmm.
So, do you still make music for yourself, or what is your relationship with music like now when you're outside of the therapy setting?
For myself these days, I most of what I do is playing piano. So we have a baby grand piano in our living room, and that's also the room I've got two little kids, two little girls, ages 5 and almost 2. So when I play the piano, I can sit down at the piano and play, and they just kind of play around me. It's a little bit harder to get out my oboe and a stand and practice and that. Um, so piano, I like to sit down at the piano and play through fake books or improvise. And my 5-year-old will ask me to play. She'll say, "Mommy, will you play the piano?" And she just wants to be around music. I mean, she just wants me to play. Sometimes she'll request princess songs, so I'll play Disney princess songs for her. But and sometimes we'll get out my instruments and they'll play along with me or whatever. But yeah, so that's the main place. I haven't been able to be in any performing groups or anything formal like that since I became a mom, because I don't have the time in my schedule for a like a weekly rehearsal anymore. I was in a bell choir and a church choir when I was younger as a music therapist. So, but I like looking for I think it's important to find outlets for music making outside of what we do with clients, because that nurtures the musical part of myself that I'm giving when I'm with clients, and so I need to kind of refill my cup in that way.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think too that it's it's important for us to maintain our own relationship with music and
Mm,
what it is about music and music making that keep that, like you said, fills you up, keeps us
mhm.
going.
Right.
Hmm. So as you've gotten older
Hmm.
and you've had played different roles with music, how would you say that your relationship with music has evolved or changed?
Um, I feel much freer with music now. I feel um, less judgmental of myself and the sounds that I create than when I was, a music major and practicing my instrument and perfecting my craft. Um, I feel like that's really the best way to summarize it is I feel a lot more free. I feel much more free to make things up and to play wrong notes and to be out of rhythm and to experiment with that and see what I like and what I don't like. Um, as a classically trained musician, from piano all the way through college, you learn how to play music in a particular way and you want your tone to sound a certain way and you want, and everything is about being very precise and playing it the way that Mozart would have wanted it or Hindemith would have wanted it or however. And I don't feel as constrained by that anymore. I think, and I haven't been playing a lot of classical like oboe solos anymore since I graduated from my undergraduate. Really, I think if I were to go back to some of that repertoire now, I imagine that I would have a lot more um, depth and emotional expression in my playing than I did when I was 20. I think that's probably some of what has changed. When I was younger, I was very concerned with um, technical correctness. And now I'm much more, I think I have a deeper emotional connection to the music and a deeper relational connection now that I'm playing music with people in a different way as a music therapist, as opposed to when I was a member of an orchestra under baton of conductor. That give and take, we don't quite know what's going to happen between us during this music making. Um, there's a lot more freedom there than when I was younger as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. I
Mhm.
noticed that for myself as a vocalist, recognizing how after several years of working as a music therapist and working as a counselor and being with people experiencing difficult situations and holding that space, just noticing how my relationship with my voice has deepened and
Mhm.
how much easier it has become to connect with the emotional dimensions of
Mhm.
music now that I have more life experience under my.
Yeah. 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 It's something I've thought about. Like I didn't take any formal voice lessons ever, really. And I stopped singing in a choir on a regular basis when I was like sixth grade. I went the instrumental route. So I was in band and orchestra. I wasn't in choir. So I didn't get a lot of vocal technique kind of training, that sort of thing. Um, And so at different times in my career, I thought about going to get voice lessons to help with improving various really the technical part of my singing voice and that kind of thing. And I think I have a little bit of fear that if I were to take formal music lessons, that I would have that technical, structure put back on me, and then I would, feel less comfortable with my voice, even if it were technically better. So I've been thinking about that recently, and I don't want to lose the freedom that I feel in my music, in my voice and all the instruments that I play. Um, so I don't even know how to begin to find a voice teacher who would understand that aspect. It probably would have to be a music therapist.
Probably. Or uh, a voice teacher who isn't so attached to the
Mhm.
classical style of training.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Yeah. You paused. Hello.
No, a little technical difficulty on my part. Um, I was just saying it's funny for myself just how easily those classical constraints just fell away
Hmm.
after college. And granted, it took it took an illness
Oh,
to
yeah.
encourage that, to promote that. But yeah, it's like once I started studying music therapy, my life before that, I it's hard to even remember that there was a time where I was singing arias. You know?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
But it's a fun memory.
Right. Yeah.
So part of my interest in interviewing some of my female musician friends is also to explore a little bit the role that gender plays
Okay.
in as a professional, as a musician, depending on what how you make music a part of um, your life. And what role would you say that being female plays in how you relate to music and the music therapy profession?
Um, well, as you know, our field is dominated by women, and our field is healthcare. Healthcare in general is dominated by women, but a lot of the executive leadership are men still. Um, as far as being a music maker, I think that since so many of us are women, so many music therapists are women, it's harder for people to take us seriously, perhaps because so many of us are women. I think that might be an aspect in the business building part of it. And then sometimes when I'm making music with clients, I don't know if it's so much that I'm a woman or that I'm a young person, but I definitely have, I'm a younger woman in these older adult groups. So I'm a sweetie, I'm a honey, I'm a dear. Um, I'm not, that allows me to come into the music in a certain way that's naturally caring and not naturally intimidating or directive. And I think that's an advantage for me, that if people are going to stereotype me, it's probably going to be as somebody who's kind and nurturing and motherly and young, young and sweet and all those kinds of things, which I think is kind of an advantage coming in, that I'm perceived that way. Um, so that makes it easier on the clinical side, I think, and I think maybe it's more challenging on the business side sometimes. I think being a woman, coming in as a woman, that can make it more difficult to work with male clients in some settings, but I don't it hasn't been a challenge for me working with older adults. Um, Again, because a lot of, if we're talking about, transference, a lot of times they're seeing me as a daughter or a granddaughter rather than um, as, somebody to disrespect or not take seriously just because I'm a woman. So I don't know, maybe they think that maybe the clients I work with don't perceive that I'm an expert, like a healthcare expert, but they don't perceive me as threatening and somebody they want to leave either. So kind of both sides of that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, on the one hand, I can see, in based on my own experience too, having
Hmm.
worked in hospice, seeing that it can be advantageous in being able to develop rapport
Hmm.
with clients,
Hmm.
and then at the same time, the the business side of it, whether that be being taken seriously by people who are in positions of power and authority.
Hmm.
Um, but then I don't know how much of that is based on gender and how much of that is just based on um, conditioning.
Yeah, or my own insecurity.
Yeah, yeah,
Right. Yeah.
yeah. It's
Right. And again, I mean, healthcare at this point is more and more run by women every day. So especially elder care, um, elder care for sure, and then hospice. Um, on the clinical side of hospice is getting to be mostly women as well. So it's not. Sometimes I worry more about being a caregiver for men and making sure that they're not feeling marginalized because they're in the minority. When I very first started my career, this doesn't even have to do with music, but when I first started my career, I worked at an inpatient psychiatric hospital and I was a mental health worker. This was before my internship. I was a mental health worker. I was kind of like an aide. And so we would get older male clients, and part of what we had to do was help them with toileting. And so they would be, have dementia. And so that experience really gave me some insight and some empathy into what it must be like to be. I remember I can picture him right now. I don't remember his name, but I can picture him, this like 6 foot 3 inch tall man, um, very strong, physically strong, tall man. But now he's not wearing any clothes and there's all these women who are trying to get him to do something, and how scary, frightening, isolating that must be, you know. Anyway, so that's the more of the gender issue, I think, in music therapy as terms of my experience.
Mhm. What do you think? What do you see as the future for music therapy in elder care and um, the this aspect of healthcare?
Well, the need for music therapists is only going to keep increasing along with the size of the population of older adults and the prevalence of dementia. I mean, we know that music is one of the very few modalities that can consistently reach people who have dementia for a long time. Um, I hope that the sea change will continue where we see music as being an essential standard of care for people who have memory loss. I hope that the pendulum swings back in our society as a whole, where we value the arts and value music in particular as being essential to quality of life. not just for little kids. I mean, I think we're still pretty good about making sure that our preschoolers get to do music stuff, you know, but as adults, we don't give ourselves permission. I mean, we feel like we have to be a musician in order to be able to um, do music. And so then you get into your later years and you become more isolated and more dependent on people. That's when you need more music. And so I hope that those of us who are leaders in the field and leaders in the area of music and healthcare and elder care can keep pushing that change to making sure that everybody has access to music and has access to these valuable, meaningful music experiences during the last stage of their life. But I think it's on the rise. I think the tide is turning towards more music at the end of life and in the later years, and I just hope that's going to keep continuing.
I hope so too, and I hope that that there will be funding for that.
Yeah. You know, I've been talking with Dan Cohen, who's the executive director of Music and Memory, and they get iPods in the hands and personalized music in the hands of seniors in senior living communities across the country and now in other parts of the world. And one of the very cool things that's happening there is they're figuring out how to get state funding for this program. And planting these programs in a lot of different facilities through a pile of money that comes when nursing homes and assisted living places have violations and they have to pay fines. That money goes into a pot that's supposed to be used to improve resident care. This is a way to improve care by a lot. And the states are starting to catch on to this idea and are starting to get iPods, get personalized music in a lot of nursing homes. Well, that's a fabulous first step, because once you have that, then the next step is getting a music therapist in there to help make sure that they're using that program well, but then also to start getting people to do music together and not just listening on headphones, getting people to do music together and to make it part of day-to-day life. I think that we're going to see how doing music is one of those central pieces in having a vibrant life and having, you know, the kind of life that you want to be living when you're 80, 90 years old. And that we'll see that quality of life expectations are going to rise and that people are going to expect that kind of care. And we music therapists need to be there to provide that or to guide people in providing that kind of care.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that it's going to be especially pronounced as our current generation of younger, older adults,
Mm-hmm.
those born post World War II,
Yeah.
as they get older, because music just had a whole different degree of connection.
Right.
You know,
Well, it was such a defining, I mean, music has always been a defining part of culture, but for people who were growing up in the 50s and the 60s and 70s, there was, you know, the same recordings that everybody heard, you know. Whereas before, you know, you might get sheet music and sing the same songs around the piano or at church or, you know, a campfire kind of thing. For a older, you know, this young, older adults, people who grew up in the 50s, 60s, 70s, they were hearing songs on the radio and dancing the same songs at dances, and everybody heard the same songs and the same version by Elvis or the Beatles or the Rolling Stones or whoever. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that changes the way that people want to experience music once they're older too.
yeah, and like with music festivals and just the whole scene
Mm-hmm.
that developed with
Yeah.
music in the clubs in the 70s. And I mean, just after David Bowie's death, seeing all this whole outpouring of
Right.
emotion from people about what the music of this one artist meant to them.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. It'd be really interesting. It'd be interesting to see how our work changes and how people's expectations and their desires change too.
Yeah. And I think also what things come up for
Yeah.
people. What are the personal connections that they've made with
Mhm.
songs, and how can we as music therapists be sensitive and attuned
Right.
to that?
Yeah. Very true.
Well, I have one other question.
Okay.
Is maybe as a way to kind of tie things up,
Mhm.
is what advice would you give to a young female, maybe a teenager,
Mhm.
who is just developing her own relationship with music?
Yeah. Well, I think I would just say do the kind of music that feels good. Um, but pick something and really learn it. Pick an instrument. It can be a band instrument, or it can be choir, or it can be, guitar, or the band you form with your friends or something. But um, feel free to experiment with a lot of different things, but then also choose one to stick with and to learn and to really get good at, because all the skills that you develop on that one instrument are going to make you a stronger musician overall. And there's some value, I think, in being challenged and having to overcome those challenges, having to do the hard parts of learning an instrument. I think I gained as much from practicing scales and practicing etudes and making reeds and doing all the hard part of being an oboist, as much as the joy of being in the middle of an orchestra and playing Mahler or something like that. I mean, there's payoff in both directions, and that's really the joy of being a musician. But no matter what, my advice is don't let anybody tell you that you're not musical. Don't let anybody shame you for your voice or for the instrument that you've chosen or for the music that you've chosen, because every single person deserves to do music and to be music and to choose music. And so choose what you want and do it. And you can change your mind later.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree. There's so much that we can learn about ourselves by diving in and really learning how to
Hmm.
make music.
Yeah.
I mean, it's fun to, you know, noodle around, but to be willing to do that hard work and to understand how it works and how to make it your own.
Hmm. Hmm.
It's
Yeah.
priceless.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for taking this time to hang out with me via the Googles, and and to talk, share with me, and whoever is listening, share more about your work as a music therapist and your journey in becoming a music therapist.
Yeah. Well, thank you for having me.
You're welcome. So, with that, thank you again, and thank people watching. And if you want to know more about Rachelle's work, you can check out her websites, soundscapingsource.com, S as in Sam, OUND, S as in Sam, CAPING,
Hmm.
S as in Sam, O-U-R.
CE.
.com.
Yeah.
And if you're watching this, you're probably going to be seeing this through my YouTube channel, Soundwell Music. And you can learn more about me and the work that I do at soundwellmusictherapy.com or faithhalversonramos.com. But all of that information will be on YouTube. So again, thank you and have a lovely day.
You too.
Thank you.